Hey, it's Miss West 7th grade social studies class, and we are learning about limited and unlimited governments. So first, before we get started with the story, I gotta go over some vocabulary terms with you just so you kind of know what I'm talking about. So our first vocabulary term is monarchy. A monarchy is a king or a queen, someone that wears a crown, like Prince John here. Absolutism is a leader that has total or absolute power. An absolute leader does not have to be a king or queen, they just have to have all the power. So here's a guy saying, I make the rules, obey me. An absolute leader could say, like, you pay me taxes, you kiss my foot, and you would have to obey them or you could die. All right, so there's a difference. There's absolute monarchy and a constitutional monarchy. Both are kings or queens because there's a monarchy, so they're wearing crowns. An absolute monarchy is their king or queen with total power, absolute power. They do whatever they want. Constitutional monarchy, they get to wear the crown, but they have limited power. A constitution limits their power, and they don't get to do whatever they want. We got some rulers that believe that their power was given to them by God. It's called divine right. If something's divine, it's like holy. So their power comes from God. People don't want to mess with God. So they're like, all right, I'll listen to whatever you say. And they follow whatever that leader says. Here you can see we've got a guy that says, God loves me. God gave him all the power to make all the cheeseburgers. Limited government is when power is restricted. So any government that can't do whatever they want. John Locke, Montesquieu, Rousseau, other Enlightenment philosophers that we talked about in our last unit all talked about having a limited government. America has a limited government. There you can see John Locke being all America. And here we've got Ronald Reagan. He says, man is not free unless government is limited. So limited government gives us freedoms. That must be why my granny loved Reagan so much. Unlimited government is a lot like absolutism. The leader has no rules. They do whatever they want. No rules. Kind of like some middle schoolers I know, thinking they got unlimited rule. All right, here we've got a little story. It's story time, so sit back, pay attention. Once upon a time, in England, King John was an absolute monarch. He was doing whatever he wants. You pay my taxes. You kiss my foot. Then the people were like, oh no, this is not okay with us. And they forced him to sign the Magna Carta. The Magna Carta takes away some of his rule, gives him limited power, and there's now a limited government in England. The Magna Carta also gave people some rights, like trial by jury, so they could not get thrown in jail and killed for no reason. Someone had to prove they were innocent or guilty. King Edward of England created a parliament. Parliament is a lot like our Congress here in the United States. It's a bunch of politicians, many of which are elected. They help make laws. So they're limiting the power of King Edward by helping make the laws. All this unlimited rule in England lasts for about 400 years of happiness. Then Queen Elizabeth dies. Now, Queen Elizabeth was the last Tudor monarch. She did not have a husband and she did not have any children, probably because her dad was a crazy who killed like so many of his wives. Anyways, so her cousin's kid, James I, takes over. He all thinks that God gave him power. He believes in divine right. So he's going to take over and have unlimited rule of England. James I dies and Charles I takes over. Parliament is like, OMG, we need to take back control. Charles I, he's like, I think that God gave me power too. So he ignores the Parliament and Parliament executes Charles. There he is, losing his noggin. Everyone in England freaks out and there is a civil war. People are fighting. Then Oliver Cromwell takes over and he sets up martial law, which basically means the military runs everything. They're running up and down the streets, telling people what to do. It's freaky, like this picture. Then Oliver dies. Everyone's like, whew! And Parliament restores the monarchy. So they call up Charles II. They're like, hey man, could you like take over now? We'd like to restore the monarchy. Charles II is like, okay, totally will. Which is weird considering Charles I was his relative and like they killed him. But anyways, this is called the Restoration because they are restoring the monarchy. Then Charles II dies. James II takes over. James II dies. And then Parliament's like, we should call up James II's daughter, Mary. She's married to William of Orange. And see if she wants to take over the throne with her hubby William. They call up Mary. Mary's like, sure, I would love to come back to England. I loved it there. It's my hood. And so there's a catch. If they take over England, they have to sign the English Bill of Rights. This gives the people of England some rights and Parliament some rights. And Mary and William are like, sure, no probs. And so we call this the Glorious Revolution. It was glorious. And there you can see a picture of Mary being like, I love constitutional monarchies. And England lived happily ever after. And that's the Queen of England now. You should know that. Meanwhile, in France, here we've got King Louis XIV. He's all, bonjour, King Louis. I got big hair. All right, and he sees what happens in England, and he freaks out. He's like, oh, I have to take over more power. So he becomes the model for absolutism. He's got all the power. He bans the Estates General from meeting. The Estates General is like Parliament or like Congress, so they're no longer allowed to meet and help him make any laws. And he overrules the Edict of Nantes, which gave Protestants religious freedom at the time. The Protestants are very unhappy. Oh, and they call him the Sun King because he thinks the whole world revolves around him. Kind of like some middle schoolers. Then in Russia, Peter the Great is the Tsar. He has total power. He's an absolute ruler. And he also believes in divine right, that God gave him the power to rule. So there's no rights for the people of Russia at this time. He plans on improving technology and the military, and he wants to westernize Russia, which means make Russia more like Europe. There you can see a picture of him with his nice little mustache saying, I will improve technology and the military. He also makes the men of Russia shave their beards because he wants them to look more European. Lots of people take over Russia. They have all this rule and stuff. And then Catherine the Great takes over by poisoning her husband. She is Europe's last major absolute monarch. And she's pretty great. So that's what happens. Limited and unlimited rulers. Any questions? No? All right.